Whether a phrase is useful or not is to take the opposite approach and say, is that one useful?
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Appraiser Coach Podcast. Another minisode for you today. I want to talk a little bit about the buzz out there in social media, specifically the buzz around banned words. And I'm going to share with you my opinion today. First, I want to pause and remind you that we're sponsored by a great company called Spark. Spark will allow you to save time. Spark saves you money. Don't look at the fee and the cost as much as the time savings, folks. It's an investment in you, in your company. Spark4appraisers.com. Spark4appraisers.com. All right, folks. It has been an item for the last couple of years, and it has heated up and only, quote unquote, gotten worse, if you will, where appraisers are getting letters from Fannie Mae being warned against banned words, so-called banned words, naughty words, things they should not be saying in their appraisal reports. And of course, they immediately take to social media and they jump on Facebook and Instagram and whatever forums are out there for appraisers, and they say, oh, this is horrible. I got a letter from Fannie Mae and they told me to stop using the word desirable. I've always used the word desirable. What's wrong with the word desirable? Appraisals are subjective. I can use subjective words like desirable. Folks, first of all, I understand your frustration. I do. It's difficult to be told what you can and can't do. And it's even more difficult when what you're being told that you can and can't do is tied directly to your ability to make a living. Okay? Most of us have set up our appraisal businesses based on lending, and therefore we're using forms that are created by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and that's ultimately our client and consumer, if you will. So they ultimately pull the strings when it comes to what we can and can't do. I do find it a little bit funny, and please forgive me for this, but I do find it a little bit funny that we choose to work for a client, and when that client has specific scope of work, right, that they are wanting in their portfolio, that doesn't go against USPAP, that doesn't, fight against greater ethics and morals. Again, the scope of work, I'm very aware, folks, scope of work is up to you as the appraiser ultimately in combination with your client. But I do find it funny that we choose to work for a company or a group or a GSE or a client. Let's just call them a client. We choose to work for a client, and then we complain that that client wants things done a certain way. Now, again, this is not the podcast to talk about whether or not Fannie Mae can, quote unquote, dictate and tell you how to appraise. Okay, that's a totally different subject. That's not what we're talking about here. And I think that's part of the problem. Appraisers are jumping on social media and they're saying they can't tell me what kind of words I can use. Well, you're right. They can't tell you what kind of words you can use, but they certainly can choose whether or not they're going to utilize you as an appraiser that works for them. Okay, so in a very real sense, yeah, they kind of can. They kind of can. Now, again, they're not telling you to do anything immoral or unethical, though it seems like some appraisers are jumping to that. If you're going to tell me that I can't use the word desirable, then you're basically telling me how to appraise. Really? First of all, let me set the stage for just a second. Okay, let's back up. Let's get rid of the emotion for just a second. Let's state it for what it is. Okay. Many people are saying that this is new, that Fannie Mae is coming up with this new banned word list, right? Folks, this is not new. This is simply Fannie Mae educating. I'm not even going to say enforcing, and I want to go back to that word for just a second. Fannie Mae is simply educating appraisers on policies that they have always had, right? And because it's coming out in the form of a letter, appraisers are freaking out. and they are calling it enforcement. Okay. I have not yet seen a letter, and I've seen several of these letters. Many of my clients, my coaching clients, have reached out to me and said, Dustin, I got a letter, and they send it to me, and I read through it, folks. And I'm part of my job as a coach is to calm people down a little bit and say, hold on a sec. All this is, I wouldn't even call it a warning letter. It's an educational letter. All it's saying is, hey, we checked some of your reports, and they have the following words in them, and we don't allow those words. So stop doing it. There's no enforcement. There's no blacklist. There's no, we're going to withhold work from you. There's no, you can't ever work for Fannie Mae again. None of that, folks. I mean, if that was happening, okay, I can see that, okay, I'd get my feathers in a ruffle as well. Okay. That's not what's going on. Appraisers are being educated. And frankly, this is the way that I think enforcement should happen on all levels. I love what Texas, for example, has done, right? When I talk to my good friend Diane, she says that she spent a lot of her life working for the Texas State Board in education, so that when appraisers get quote unquote in trouble, they're assigned a mentor for a period of time. And she's one of those mentors that helps them and educates them and teaches them not to get in trouble in the future. I love that. Okay. Much different than other states that I know of that will simply slap you on the wrist and give you a fine or what have you if you quote unquote do something wrong. I love the education side. And that's all that Fannie Mae is doing here, folks. Really. I mean, I've not yet seen an appraiser get banned for using words that they shouldn't use. And I'm going to go one step further, but I'm going to do so after the break. First, I want to pause and remind you that we're sponsored by a great company called Spark for Appraisers. SparkForAppraisers.com is where you find out more about a company that allows you to be able to take data that you choose. You're still fully in control as the appraiser, and hit one button and download it directly into your report. Whether you're using Alamode or some other software, it will download it directly into the report. We're talking about the subject data, the comps that you chose, the MC sheet, if you're still doing those for some of these clients, right? The top of the grid on page 2, all of that stuff will be filled in for you, as well as some market data as well that will be helpful for you in your analysis. Check them out by going to Spark for appraisers.com. Again, it's Spark for appraisers.com. All right, folks, welcome back. Dustin Harris hanging out on the podcast treadmill this morning. We're talking about words that are, well, they're naughty words when it comes to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the GSEs, okay? I'm going to share with you my opinion, and I'm not going to be liked for it. Now, some of you might be fine with it. In fact, I know many of you that feel the same way that I do, but there are many appraisers out there that are freaking out over this what they call a new push for, getting rid of banned words, if you will. And they're puffing out their chest and saying, how dare they tell me what I can use in my report and what I can't? I've been using the word desirable my whole life. Well, folks, here's my opinion. If you've been using the word desirable in your reports for years, you've been doing it wrong for years. There, I said it. All this is Fannie Mae helping to re-educate us on what we should have learned from our mentors in the beginning. Well, Dustin, what's wrong with the word desirable? Okay, folks, because desirable to who? Right? It's such a subjective word. It doesn't mean anything in your, how does the word desirable enhance the quality of your report? Ask yourself that. How does the phrase pride of ownership in any way help you to increase the value that you're giving to your client? How does the phrase typical buyer, what does that even mean? Typical for what? For who? Right? And I know some of you are like, well, all I used was the phrase starter home, and they banned me. Folks, what does that even, think through this for a second. I am a big fan of taking complicated things and boiling them down to the most simplistic questions ever. That helps me because I'm not that smart to understand things. So when someone says you can't use the phrase starter home in your appraisals, it's very easy to get emotional and say, well, my hell, it's a neighborhood full of starter homes. Okay, calm down for a second, step back, take a breath, and then ask yourself, what the hell does that even mean? Now, by the way, folks, I've probably used the term starter home in my appraisals in the past. Okay, so I'm as much being educated here as you. I just don't take the same attitude that some appraisers are taking and get offended when I get corrected about things I probably should get corrected about. Starter home means absolutely nothing. It's not an objective phrase. And we as appraisers are trying to support our values using objective data. Okay, what does the term close proximity mean? Again, I've used this one myself. I talked to Tim Anderson about this a few weeks ago. You can listen to the episode. I've used driving distance before. Okay, the subject is within driving distance of schools and universities and airport. Driving distance, you can drive anywhere. My son is today taking he lives 8 hours from me. He is within driving distance of me. Okay, he's taking that trip today, 8-hour trip in the car to get from where he's at to home. He is within driving distance of home. Okay, folks, calm down. Okay, these phrases, let's take the one that we started with, desirable. Okay, would you ever in your life use the word undesirable in your report? Ask yourself that. The great question to ask yourself, whether a phrase is useful or not, is to take the opposite approach and say, is that one useful? In other words, because I've probably used the word desirable before, right? It kind of makes sense. And I can see why people get upset, right? Desirable. Okay, it's a desirable neighborhood, right? Again, what does that really mean? I don't know. But would you ever say the subject is located in an undesirable neighborhood behind Walmart? I mean, if you can take the opposite phrase and use it, it might help you. It might help all of us to say, yeah, you know what? That is kind of a stupid word. Why am I using that? What should you do instead? Folks, use data, use numbers, use support, right? Real data is different than subjective terminology, okay? So though Fannie Mae is not my favorite person in the whole world, Freddie Mac can really get under my skin sometimes, okay? I'm going to take their side on this one, right? We never should have been using those phrases in the first place. It's time to better our game. It's time to up our game and to be more professional. Many of us complain that we're not treated as professionals, and yet sometimes we don't act like we should or like we want to be treated. And yes, I'm throwing myself under the bus as well. Okay, I've been there. I've done that. I continue to get better every day. Instead of complaining against these letters, let's take them as an opportunity to better ourselves and be a better valuation professional. Thank you, folks, for joining me. Speaking of joining me, I would love to have you join me on YouTube. If you're listening to this in your car, but you want to see what happens behind, you see all of these camera angles, check it out by going to my YouTube channel. It's The Appraiser Coach. Just go to YouTube and type in The Appraiser Coach. You will find my channel, subscribe, and you will never miss an episode. Thanks, folks, and go create some value.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.